Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. Welcome to another video. This video is from Mt Selwyn, starting pretty much accepting a little footage at the Mt Selwyn heli-pad and around to the summit, and then down to the Lake Cobbler Track, through Abbeyard and along to Lake Cobbler, as you saw there on the map. This little river crossing is in the Buckland Valley, just checking out one of the campsites there on the way up to Mt Selwyn. So a cracking little camping spot, and broken into two areas. There's a long drop toilet on both sides, and to get to the island area you've got this little river crossing. So we're actually up on Mt Selwyn here already, not long left the helipad, working our way around the west side of Mt Selwyn to get to the southern side where the summit track is. So this track around the western and southern side of Mt Selwyn can be fairly boggy and rutted at times. Condition, like a lot of tracks, varies markedly throughout the year. I've driven it several times and it's never been exactly the same any one time. Amazing to see actually on this side of the mountain how unaffected by the bushfires the forest was. Obviously the ridgeline there stopped a lot of the bushfires sort of 18 months ago, and they didn't make it onto this particular side of Mt Selwyn. So I have seen it a lot wetter, softer and boggier than this. This is pretty mild. So this trip was done just after the seasonal track closures ended. A little bit of a boggy section there, and as the season pushes on, that'll probably get more rutted and softer. Now Mark's with me today driving his Colorado. It's pretty much a stock Colorado SUV with a bull bar. That's basically it. Doesn't even have a lift on that thing. Really capable vehicles, the Colorados. So this is just one of many ways to approach the Selwyn summit, and if you've been watching the channel you've possibly seen some footage along these tracks in the past. I do try not to double up too much. That was a little softer and slipperier than anticipated, as you saw there. Probably a bit of driver error involved in that as well. So you can see here, you know, this section's decently rutted. It was pretty firm today. I just elected to drive straight in the ruts. That was the easiest option. Yeah, good solid base today, but obviously when there has been some rain around, it has been quite soft. So just something to be aware of. You know, if you're heading to this part of the high country and there's been a fair bit of rain recently, these sections of the track here are likely to be quite different to what you're seeing on the video today. Shout out there to Jared, the cameraman. That's just the same section, and that's actually shot on my Samsung phone. Takes decent video. Mark's opting for a little bit of a safer line. Not wanting to test out the clearance on his Colorado too much there just yet. So again, you know, the video tends to flatten everything, but not an overly deep bog hole or overly deep ruts, but something that will change throughout the season. You can see this part of Mt Selwyn sort of come around from that ridge. Looks like it was affected by the bushfires, but is recovering. Always enjoy getting up to Mt Selwyn. I still believe, you know, everybody talks about Blue Rag and blue rag's great, and so is billy goats, but I still believe that Mt Selwyn is actually one of the best vantage points and probably one of the easiest to get to for uninterrupted views of large sections of the high country. So just working our way down here. And we've reached the little track, the summit track that takes you from that Mt Selwyn road that we're on up to the summit. As I've said previously on other videos, this is not typically a difficult drive. It's a little bit enclosed, and you do have to be aware of the trees close to the edge of the track, but generally it's a pretty easy drive except for the very last section. Already you start to get a glimpse of the views from the ridge on the way up here. Just reaching the last ridge here and the last run up to the actual summit area. Now this area here looks like a bit of a turning area for those that don't want to tackle the very last section here. That's the top. You can see where the blue sky is up there. This is a little bit steeper, a little bit rockier, and can be a bit loose at times. Right near the top there's a couple of wombat holes typically dug out, and if you're in an IFS vehicle like me, you will get a little bit of a wheel lift. There it is, but it's usually not terribly difficult to drive. Interesting to note the difference in flex, even having like the Colorado does, a solid axle on the rear only and IFS front. So this is just the Pajero coming up. Again, shot from the outside with the trusty Samsung Galaxy. So if you watch that front left tyre, you'll see the right rear drops in the hole, lack of flex, and you just get a small wheel lift there. So what's interesting is when you watch Mark come up with his Colorado, he's got a solid axle in the rear which flexes a little bit more than the IFS. He takes nearly the same line as me, but I'm pretty sure you're going to see that his front wheel doesn't actually lift at all. He's just coming through that section now, and yeah, because of that flex he's got with the solid rear axle, no wheel lift there at all. So look, here we are up on the Mt Selwyn summit. Cracking day, blue skies, clear vision. Looking back to Hotham there, you got pretty much 360-degree views, and that's where we're heading later today. You can see that's Mt Cobbler, and that's our destination later today. So we headed back down. As I was saying, look, I love IFS for the clearance underneath, but it's really interesting driving with other people and just seeing how vehicles with different suspension setups handle the tracks. And it's not the first time, if you saw the videos with Sam and his MUX, which is IFS front, solid axle rear, again, a little bit more technical tracks, and that solid axle in the rear seemed to make all the difference. So definitely food for thought there. But yeah, we're just making our way back around Mt Selwyn before we get on to the East Buffalo Road, which will take us down to the Abbeyard Road to start the Lake Cobbler, Lake Cobbler Track. Bit of a descent down here, Again, nothing too difficult. It's a pretty easy run down this side. Just keep it in low range and let your engine braking help you out. Minimise the amount of time spent on the pedal. Once you get down the bottom, it's a pretty scenic little drive through here, and as I said, it's pretty easy going for most of the way. It's the kind of stuff you could definitely tackle in an all-wheel drive vehicle. As is so often the case, there's just a few sections up there on Mt Selwyn where you really want the clearance and ability of a proper four-wheel drive, but so much of these tracks you could handle in a decent all-wheel drive vehicle. Not that you'd want to go up there in one by yourself. The HEMA maps are not a bad guide for the difficulty of tracks, but just take it with a grain of salt. I've certainly driven medium tracks that were very difficult and difficult tracks that were actually quite easy because maintenance and track grading changes the conditions when maintenance is done quite markedly. So this is just a fork off to the side. That little track on the right there actually takes you down to a little campsite by the river, so yeah, keep left there unless you're looking to camp up. And we're just about coming out into the valley here at the end of the East Buffalo Road and onto the Abbeyard Road. So just a couple of k's along the Abbeyard Road until we get to the Lake Cobbler Track. As you can see, a little bit of recent rain has greened everything up really nicely. So here we are, starting the Lake Cobbler Track, which starts right at the McIver Bush Camp on the Abbeyard Road. So this eastern end of the track is a lot of clay, so this can vary markedly with the amount of rain that you've had. So at the moment there's been a little bit of rain, not heaps, but already we can see evidence of decent erosion. That's something you see on this section of track a lot, so lots of ruts, lots of erosion channels. They do what they can in forming and shaping the track, so this section for the first few k's has a lot of humps to try and stop the water flow. What we found is that the other side of those humps, because we were travelling uphill from east to west, the other side of those humps tended to be quite soft. So a lot of those ruts were actually not soft for us, unless there was actually water sitting in there. It was just something to be aware of, and obviously like that one there on the right, you don't want to drop a wheel down in there. But you can certainly get an idea of if you were to attempt this after a few days or a week of rain. It is a track that's seasonally closed, I think. It certainly would be challenging. It's another track that I've driven a few times. Pretty sure this is the first video I've posted on this track. I actually had one of my first four-wheel drive mishaps on this track some years ago, which we'll get to when we get there. So again, you can see the size of those erosion channels on the right hand side of the track there, just something to be aware of. And yeah, good example there of you come up over those rise and just on the other side it's a bit wet, soft, because the water's collecting there and pooling there, and just sort of sitting there. So another one, much the same. We had a good few kilometres of this sort of steady climb on this clay section of track. And again, this particular part here wasn't too soft, and I elected just to drive the ruts and follow the path that had been cut by others. So again, just come up over a small rise there, looking for the best line. The camera does tend to flatten everything, so yeah, decent sized rut there on the right that you really don't want to drop a tyre in. That one's again mostly been dug out, I think, by rainfall and erosion rather than tyres. Doesn't leave you heaps of track to try and drive on. Over the hill and you sort of get a rut there running across and a soft spot in the middle. It's a matter of where do you choose your line, and do you stick right and follow those larger ruts. So opted for the easier line on the left here. Having navigated that, I've come straight up over the top here. Now this is actually pretty soft and I could see that, and again, that bog hole there in the middle is deeper than it looks and softer than it looks, so I decided to try and span it because I didn't want to put a wheel in that rut on the right hand side there that you sort of probably can't see. So I've tried to span that and go through it, and that's not going to happen. The back end slid across and we're now pretty much stuck. Tried to reverse out of it, that's going nowhere. Forwards, going nowhere. So there's Mark and Jared having a look, confirming, yep, I've managed to go and get myself stuck. Simple as that, just choosing the wrong line coming over that hill there. And so Abbeyard track, this is the result of choosing the wrong line. As you can see, she's buried to the back bar pretty much on the back side. We tried to go around a hole, but we ended up in the hole. Yeah, this side's not too bad, but yeah, I think it's a winch to get out of here today. So we did winch out of there. Didn't catch that on video, unfortunately. It was a short, easy winch. Now, with the benefit of seeing what happened to me, Mark selected to take that right-hand line and go around that soft spot, and he's managed to do that and not drop a wheel in that big rut. So there you go. Much simpler when you take the right line. That shows how easy it is to go off track. And yeah, it was a quick 2-minute winch, moved the car 3 meters. That was about all it needed. So one of those times you're really glad you've got the winch on the front. Look, I probably could have dug the max tracks out, but yeah, the winch was a sure thing and pretty quick and easy when you got some extra helping hands. So from there the track turns into a much more gravelly sort of track through the midsection, and again continues climbing up onto the ridge. Once you get out of those first few kilometres where it's very clay and very rutted, the midsection of this track is actually a pretty easy drive. Through this middle section, there's a few reasonably steep climbs. Not that one, but some still coming up. There, at the time of this video, they were pretty easy drives. I have seen them very rocky, very loose, and quite a scramble to sort of get up them. this is one of those such hills now. So this actually takes you up to a heli-pad and sort of a lookout area partway along the track, and it's obviously been graded as part of the bushfire works, so made life pretty easy. I have seen this a lot looser and a lot more challenging to actually get up. It didn't even spin a wheel on this particular trip. So, and yeah, this is the heli-pad area up here, where great spot to pull up and just stretch the legs, take in the view. So from there, heading on, a little bit of a descent, still basically following this ridge line. All up the Lake Cobbler Track through to the Lake Cobbler Hut from the MacGyver Bush Camp. It's about 20 k's all up, so generally going to take you a bit more than an hour. So here's another one of those climbs. You can see a bit of rock off to the side, a bit of loose stuff, but the main track itself was actually quite freed up of gravel, and again there was no real movement or slippage there. One of the things I enjoy about driving this track is the change in the terrain and the constant views that you get working along these ridge lines. The view's always changing out across the high country, and generally speaking it's not an overly difficult track. Notwithstanding, I managed to get myself stuck. So yeah, this tail end of the track before you get to the Cobbler Road, which comes up from Cheshunt, is just a series of ups and downs, gravel, rocky climbs. This is a longer, steeper one than most. Most of them are not terribly difficult. You'll see as we get closer to the end of this track, we do end up with a fairly narrow track. It's not somewhere you want to be overtaking, that's for sure. And we're on our way back down from another small rise there. This particular clearing coming up down here I know quite well. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, back in about 2014, 2015, actually spent the night here with the family. We had a Suzuki Grand Vitara XL7 back then, and one of the linkages in the transfer case unhooked themselves, and so we had a perfectly working car, but couldn't go anywhere. That turn off there is the turn off to the logging track, which also links around to the Cobbler Road. So, but we want to stay on the main track. So, yeah. So we found ourselves. Transmission worked, engine worked, transfer case linkage had broken or unhooked itself, so we couldn't actually engage drive on any of the wheels, and we had a hill behind us and a hill in front of us. Wasn't a good place to be. Spent the night there, managed to get onto the guys from Reedy Recovery out of Warrigal, who came out and recovered us and fixed the vehicle. So shout out to Reedy Recovery, top blokes, still providing a great service. Let's just say I travel a little better prepared these days. Once you've passed that turn off to the logging track, you've only got about 3 to 4 k's to go till you meet the end of the Lake Cobbler Road, and then it's only a few kilometres to Lake Cobbler and the Lake Cobbler Hut. The very last section of this track, which we're getting close to now, is pretty much on the side of the ridge. There's not a lot of room, and it does have some steep sections, so it pays to have low range engaged and take it slow and steady. Feeling this is a pretty long, steady climb, this one. There are a couple of these. About to start the descent. Again. And this is the final sort of couple of kilometres. As I said earlier, you can see here you're pretty much on the side of the ridge here. There's really not a lot of room, not a huge margin for error, so slow and steady. Is fairly rocky, and again I think that this was probably graded as well, because I've certainly seen it a lot rockier than this and a lot looser than it was on this particular day. So, as is always the case, the camera really doesn't do this justice. This is a reasonably steep descent here, with a reasonably sharp corner at the end, so you definitely don't want to be carrying too much speed down here, because you want to be able to take this corner slow and steady. So just taking it slow and steady here myself, waiting for the guys behind and letting them know what's ahead on the track. Always good when you're out and about with mates to stay in touch on the UHF. Unfortunately, someone had cleared that tree fall long before we got there. Still doesn't leave heaps of room on this track, as you can see. So here we are, just finishing off the end of the Lake Cobbler Track. This is where it comes out and joins the Lake Cobbler Road back to Cheshunt, and the last section of road up to Lake Cobbler's straight ahead there to the left. As I said earlier, that's just a few kilometres run, and you're there. Now, I didn't get all of this track in because I was getting low on batteries on the GoPro and it was getting late in the day, but I did manage to capture a little bit of it and got some footage of Lake Cobbler and the Lake Cobbler Hut. One of the things to keep an eye out along this track is the Dandongadale Falls, easily missed. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this trip was after we'd had some good solid rain earlier in the week. Now, the place to spot the falls is actually right up here on this corner. You can just see them over there in the distance on the right hand side. So we'll just pull up here. And that is the most water I've seen going over those falls in all the times I've actually ever been here. Probably been up to Lake Cobbler 5 or 6 times. So yeah, great to see the falls looking so good, and from there it's just a couple of k's. The lake's actually just up above those falls. That's where the water for the waterfalls comes in. So here we are at Lake Cobbler. There's the Lake Cobbler Hut. That's maintained by the Wangaratta Four-Wheel Drive Club. And just down here is Lake Cobbler. Well worth the drive to get here. Cracking camping spot for those that are into kayaking and canoeing. If you could be bothered bringing them up here, you got a nice lake here to really enjoy. Never get tired of coming back to Lake Cobbler. Fantastic spot. So hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. Thanks everybody for watching, and as always, like this video if you liked it and subscribe to the channel. Every subscriber helps. And for the eager at heart, there is quite a long hike up to the Mt Cobbler summit available from that parking area there. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.